destination is really a great struggle. 5 kilometers away from Banjul, we had to drive all the way to Banjul. From Banjul, we just had to take the ferry all the way from Banjul to Barra. And when you get to Barra, you need to enjoy this bumpy road, man. Like we were shaking all the time just to get to the famous Jufre, the home of Kunta Kinteh. Come with me. I got our tour guide here. He's gonna educate me and you about the famous Kunta Kinteh Island. Nice to meet you, my man.
You're welcome, my brother. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
We are going to Kunta Kinteh.
Yes, we are going to Kunta Kinteh Island.
And where are we right now?
Yes, right now we've just the village we're coming from. That's the village known as Albreda and Jufure.
Okay.
Albreda and Jufure are two neighboring villages.
Okay.
But when you come in tourism terms, they are widely known as roots.
Roots.
But Jufure is a separate village from Albreda. Albreda is headed by a man and Jufure is headed by a woman. So now after just landing in the village now, we are on top of River Gambia, having a sailing down to the Kunta Kinteh Island, which is just about 20 kilometers ride to the Kunta Kinteh Island,
wow,
which is one of the major slave-shipping points of the Gambia, where all our ancestors who have been taken from this country into various parts of the world, where they've been captured and kept for a particular period of time before their final departure across the Atlantic to the New World. So we are now in the River Gambia, and then just coming from the north bank of the River Gambia, and that's the other side of the River Gambia, which is the southern bank, and this is the north bank. And River Gambia is very long and narrow towards the end.
Yeah.
And it divides the Gambia into two halves. But as you're going towards the end of the country, there you have fresh water, and this part is all salt water. So that's why River Gambia also had three main functions. One of the functions is fishing, transportation like we're doing right now,
exactly,
and irrigation, because the fresh water in the country is used for so many agricultural activities like education, for vegetables, and then rice production as well. So
wow,
this is the amazing, and then on this banks of River Gambia, you have this green vegetation, which is the mangroves, you know, where we locally collect sticks for firewood, roofing on houses, and we collect oysters also from the mangroves. Locally, we can also use the cells to plaster our houses, for where we collect lime for plastering houses and white painting. And on top of the water also, you can see some things lying there. These are called the trap for the streams. You know, here, Albreda also is one of the major fishing villages, so that's why you have these traps mainly for fishermen who go for streams. Yes. So wow, that's the just a tip of the iceberg about where we're going to, which is the Kunta Kinteh Island.
Saying a tip of the iceberg, which means that our tour guide knows a lot. He's really intelligent, and he's going to educate me and you. Stay tuned and enjoy this amazing episode from your boy, Mr. Maya. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, my brother. Thank you.
Do you know that the name Kunta Kinteh is famous in the entire world?
Yes.
They call this place Kunta Kinteh.
Yes.
Why the name Kunta Kinteh?
Yes, Kunta Kinteh is one of the heroes who is, like you said, who is known all around the world.
Yeah.
And actually, after Europeans' occupation of this island for decades, and then now we feel it's time really to take ownership of our history, and to also keep the legacy of Kunta Kinteh for being one of those famous people around the world, so that other incoming generations who didn't know about Kunta Kinteh, they can have the living legacy of Kunta Kinteh. That's why it was important to change the name of the island to become Kunta Kinteh Island today.
So previously this island was called?
The island was first called Andrew's Island because Andrew was one of the Portuguese sailors. Portuguese were the first who landed, occupied this island here. Okay. So later, after he's dead, the island was named after him. But it was later turned into James Island, which is named after James Duke of York, which is a British name. Has British named it after one of their king called James Duke of York. Okay. So that's when the name James Island came in 1661.
They discovered the island, but who built this whole?
The fort was built by the Baltic Latvians. Latvia then earlier was called Poland, but is the modern Latvia today. Wow. And this is one of the remaining dungeons that we got in here, where some of these men who they feel they become threats for them, because these are people who can fight against the white people to get them emancipated from slavery, not to be taken away from their homelands. So because they realize that these people have caused a lot of threats along the way, which will cause a huge amount of slaves to die after causing rebellion. So this is one of the sides, because we used to have 4 of these kind of dungeons, where they put sacks legs and hands, and then the idea was so that they would be fed once every day, so that at the end of the fortnight stay here, they become physically and mentally weak. They couldn't be any more a threat for them along the way.
So, which means that when the Portuguese came, they were actually not slave masters.
Yes, they were slave masters.
They were also slave masters.
They were slave masters as well. They were first who started slavery. You know, Portuguese force, the reason I said Portuguese force started slavery, because Portuguese force purposely came to Africa as explorers.
Yeah.
Because they've been here in our dear mother continent, rigging mineral wealth. So therefore, after they came in, eventually they decided to come into what we call missionary work, whereby they start taking people from Africa, taking them across to Portugal, to some of their masters like Prince Henry. But it was there later that led to the discovery of New World, which is America today, in 1492 by Columbus. But at the initial stage, it was Red Indians, who are today called the Native Americans, who have been using those plans and mines. But gradually they got demands higher, so their own European criminals and debtors were also start being taken. But because of there are some problems with immanence like climate and disease and resistance to the labor, so that's why the first African badge were being pointed by the Portuguese, and the first badge was indirectly taken from Portugal to the New World in 1501. That's when the first badge were taken from Portugal to the New World, and eventually later that led them to come back home Africa again, now preparing cargoes, taking them across the New World, Atlantic to the New World.
Wow. This is sad,
right? So where we right now, this is the main slave yard. And that's where the harbor was located, but because of it, it's all been destructed because of erosion. And then this particular place is slave yard. And they're looking at this round circle here with the stones. Yeah. This is another very important point of slavery. Because looking at during the cold slavery, according to the masters, from every 100 before their arrival in the New World, a huge percentage died, like 33% was perished. And then one of the reasons why they have to do this was because they want to identify, because they said our ancestors were all looking the same. They cannot identify them. That's why brandy come into slavery. The masters or company would have to mark their slave before they start to go on board. So that's why in the slave yard, this is the way it was conducted before they go on board. And looking at the right-hand side there, the left-hand side, sorry, where we got that cannon on top there, they also become one of the oldest cannon here today, which represents the presence of the French people here after 7 years of their struggle of occupying the island from the British. So during the American War of Independence, when they become successful, this is one of the cannon they brought in here. But at the time when they had to left for Gorée and left this island under the British control, the cannon was left here today. It represents the oldest cannon here on the fort, and it marks the presence of the French people here.
So the French people left this place to Gorée Island?
Exactly. No, because the French were in Gorée Island. At some time they were interested in the Gambia, but British has never wanted to give them a chance. That led them to go into war for 7 years. And eventually during the American War of Independence, because of the lack of attention by the British, so they were succeeding in capturing. But after a similar revenge in Senegal by the British, so eventually the two sides had to finally surrender each of these sides to one another. So the island has been surrendered back to the British, and then the cannon was left here. That's why it became the oldest cannon here. And then in the front side here, where we're just entering, this is the main admin side of the fort, where the governor and his men used to be living, some of his high-profile people. The first room we have on the right-hand side here, that's the council's room, and the next one by that on the right there, that's also the governor's residence. And the longer one at the end there, the other one at the far end there, that's the main store of the island. Looking at the building, it was like a two-flat, but it gradually collapsed because there was 7 years of war and destruction and rebuilding till at a certain point the island cannot be sustained. And from the store here, there was an explosion in 1726, there was an explosion of powder magazine, and according to which there was 19 guards here, and 11 out of the 19 guards all lost their life in the explosion, but there was no account of slaves, how many died and how many was in fact sustained injury. So our ancestors were more like business goods to these white masters. So this one also said that one of the first legal court that was established in the Gambia for the purpose of trying to get slavery abolished for people who are caught within the Gambian territory or waters where they could have to face the legal persecution, either pirates or illegal traders. Because British force came to Gambia to abolish slavery in 1810. But one of their first settlements was in the village of Albreda, opposite the restaurant where we have the cannon there. But they only had to relocate to the island here for so many years. But after they've been here for some years later, they found that in the Gambia, the only best place to abolish slavery was going to be Banjul. Banjul was in our capital at the time. Banjul was founded by the British in 1816. after they were here, they realized that the only possible place in the Gambia to stop slavery, they said, was going to be the mouth of the Gambia River. So that was when our capital, Banjul, was founded in 1816. At the time, it was called Batos, named after Lord Batos. Yeah. So when they founded Banjul, they started building 6-gun batteries. These were cannons that they built in the State House, the current State House. So they were using those cannons to stop any illegal ships trying to come to the Gambia. But a few years later also, they have to look for another point opposite Banjul called Barra, where the ferry goes. Yeah. Just in the other end of the ferry, at the left-hand side coming from Banjul, you have a fort they built called Fort Bull and built in 1826. So they have to build those two so they can call the whole breadth of the River Gambia. So it was the 4th year later, 1830, the British finally had to abandon this island to get their governor, move to Banjul, and his men, other men to move to Barra at the fort to abolish slavery. And this was the last cannon, excuse me, that was also brought in here by the British people after they came to this country to abolish slavery, to reinforce the abolition of slavery. After their first protocol was in the village of Albreda. Because knowing the distance from the village of Albreda in the north there, that really the cannon cannot fire from that part of the river to the other end of the river. So they have to relocate their men here. So it became the last cannon before the British were leaving this island for Banjul, that it was brought here to reinforce the abolition of slavery. So looking at the small dungeon that we saw on the ground there, so these were mainly located at the 4 corners. So at every of these dungeons above, they have the bostums where they place cannons. So below here also we have the slave dungeon. And there was another one at the other end there.
They are standing on top of a dungeon.
Exactly, and there was one at the other end there as well. So always above they have the bostums. And this was a replica of the tower of the island, but later it was turned to a tower light for ships that were mainly traveling across the Gambia. After the slavery was abolished, it was turned into a tower light. And from the panel there also, you can see the full feature of the fort, how everything shapes like in the days of slavery. You can see how everything shapes like in the days of slavery. So looking at the picture of the island, we are standing on top here right now. So this one as the old dungeon there. So that's the side that has been taken in by water, eroded by water, because the side where they kept the women slaves. So this where the thatch house is, the slave yard, meant for trying to keep more conveniency for pregnant slaves, as in like today become very warm. So in a days like today, they have to bring them into those hot houses to spend it. So this is the side where we just come through the cannon there. You can see this assembly of cannons just at the entry point down there. That's where we got it. And this is the thatch house that where the group is standing under. So that's the tower, original tower of the island during the days of slavery. Any water?
When is this place built?
This was built in 1998, but the first one built in 1996, that doesn't tell well captured about slavery. So this was a year later, this one was built to show the world that we, no matter our colors differences, no matter our religious differences, no matter we come from the globe, what is important, we are all human race. We should all say never again to slavery. That's why the cane is never again together.
Never again.
Yes.
Breaking from the chains.
Yes.
And from today onwards.
No, never again slavery.
Never again slavery. Thank you so much for taking us.
You're welcome. No problem,
really
my brother. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.